Hey everybody, Kyle Goeth here from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Goat Film Reviews YouTube channel, and I have my first reaction to Ridley Scott's new film, Gladiator 2. This is the long gestating sequel to 2000's Gladiator. It's been 24 years. That's kind of crazy. I remember watching Gladiator, I think, on a VHS tape, renting it with my parents. And in that time, I've owned it, I think, on DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K. So I own 3 copies of this movie. I've had 2 different versions of this movie. Like, I have been around Gladiator since it came out in about 2001-ish, probably when it hit home video. And so I can't say that I've been terribly excited for Gladiator 2. It's not that I think that it was going to be inherently bad. It's just kind of like, what was this movie going to be? You know, because we all heard about the horror stories, basically, about, like, the screenplay that had Maximus Decimus Meridius fighting his way through the afterlife and then experiencing, like, all the wars, like, of humankind up to present day and working at the Pentagon. Like, I don't know what that movie would have looked like. I've read enough from the screenplay itself to make me think probably not great, but certainly memorable. But it's kind of a case of, what was this movie going to be? Like, it feels like the first film has a finite ending, so what's the point? And I'm not usually one of those people that says, like, that it has to, like, be able to build off the original in the sense that you can't make the sequel. But it's kind of like, you know, prove it to me. Show me what you got, essentially. And that's what I think this film does pretty well. It opens up, and the first, like, portion of the film, I'd say the first 40 minutes, feel very reminiscent of the first film. It is a little wash, rinse, and repeat, until it isn't. There's a specific part in the film where things kind of start veering off, and the things you thought that were going to happen based on just your impressions of the first film started to change and tweak and become different. And all of it is kind of around this memory of Maximus, what his memory does to these characters. So they're not repeating the cycle, they are improving the cycle based on what he did. So it's kind of like history repeats itself in some ways, but you can learn from history and forge a new path. So it's not just this all the time, but eventually learning from it allows you to go like this. And then you can kind of start a new cycle that you hopefully will learn from and then start like this. And so that's kind of what it feels like. You know, there's a line, I'm probably going to say it wrong from the movie. The first film had a line on it that said, what we do in life echoes in eternity. I think that is it. And that feels pretty much what this movie is. It is an echo of the first film, but it's an echo that, because of those reverberations through time, people are able to learn and evolve from it. Bad guys and good guys as well. So we have Paul Mescal, who plays Lucius, and the film plays very coy with, like, his identity, but, like, it's very obvious who he is from minute, like, 1 or 2, I guess. I don't know. I felt like from the first 10 minutes, it's like the film couldn't decide. They, like, wanted to tell you that it was Lucius, but then also tell you, like, have you be shocked when it's revealed. And it's like, it doesn't really matter, but it is kind of an odd thing that happens with the film there. Paul Mescal's character is not terribly interesting in the film, but he does a good performance with what he's given to do. It's really the characters around him that I think are the most fun this time around. You've got Denzel Washington as Macrinus, who is the owner of Lucius. He's the one who buys him after he's taken into captor. Denzel Washington, I assumed he was going to have, like, a supporting role in the film. He's kind of like the second main character, if you will. And he's fantastic in the movie. You know, everyone is kind of up and up cry because he's got his like New York accent that he's rocking in the film, and it's like, yeah, that didn't really take anything away from me because it's a bunch of people who aren't speaking like Romans either, so it's not like it's not that surprising to me. But I think Denzel Washington is great in the movie. He is the reason to watch the movie for me. I also really like Pedro Pascal. He appears in the film in a new role of Marcus Acacius. He's the one who takes Lucius into slavery, basically conquers his home and takes him into slavery. And so he is our main villain through Lucius's eyes in the film. He is the person that Lucius is trying to undo. And there's some wrinkles to the story that they both have that make a really fascinating back and forth between the two of them. That's probably, again, like one of my favorite elements of this sequel, is how, again, it plays with our ideas of what we think is going to happen based on our knowledge of the first film. And so it might be a smart idea that this film has a different writer than the previous film as well. Because I know that I think David Franzoni had produced the film, and I think he might have taken a crack at the screenplay, but David Scarpa wrote the screenplay. He's the one who wrote Napoleon as well with Ridley Scott from, what was it, last year? I don't think David Scarpa is like an amazing writer. I think he tends to have a little bit of tonal inconsistencies in his writing. You know, he did this thing with Napoleon where some of Napoleon's more odd and unusual elements, he kind of like had trouble juggling those with the more serious elements. And I think there's some stuff in here as well, particularly in how he writes Fred Etchinger's character. There's 2 emperors in this film, siblings. Gita, which is played by Joseph Quinn, who I think is pretty good, and Caracalla, who is played by Fred Hetchinger. I like Fred Hetchinger, but I don't think he's really fitting the role as Scarpa wrote him, because Scarpa just kind of wrote him as being silly until he can't be silly anymore, until he has to get serious. And it's like, I don't know, there's this like juxtaposition where I just don't think those elements are juggled very well in the screenplay. And so whether or not Fred Hetchinger is even able to do anything with that screenplay is really hard for that, because it doesn't feel like that character really works. It's nice to see Connie Nielsen return. It's nice to see Derek Jacobi return. I think they're like the necessary, without being member berries, they're the necessary like nostalgic hook of the film, really, is that you almost have to have something that links it, because we're missing our main character. Like, they try their best to like link as much of they can to like the past of Maximus with the film, but you've got to have some connective tissue there. You really do. You've got to have some connective tissue between those two films. So I think that's a good thing to have Connie Nielsen return, because I think she has a purpose in the film. And I think Derek Jacobi as Gracchus, like, not as much of a purpose this time around, but because it's kind of a through line of what he was doing in the first film, I think works pretty well. Yeah, I think this whole movie is really about how, like, Maximus's memory, and like how even after death he is able to have an impact on the world around him. He was able to inspire. He was able to rise, bring people up to rise up with him. And that, I think, is what works the best about Gladiator 2. So overall, I quite enjoyed this movie. Now, let me be clear. If you were going into this movie and you were saying, it's got to be good as Gladiator, or I don't care, then don't see it. Because honestly, this is not going to be as good as Gladiator. I do not think it is as good as the first film. It's a little bit sillier. It's a little bit more of kind of like a more general popcorn film than the first one. The first one felt like it had a lot of gravitas to it, and had a lot of, felt very Shakespearean in a lot of ways. And while this film has that, in its bones, it doesn't feel as fleshed out. And again, part of that is the screenplay. Part of that is, there's a little bit more CGI that feels like CGI. Some of the set pieces, like, I know the first film wasn't entirely historically accurate either, but some of the set pieces in this one really go to the other level of, like, completely inaccurate, and, like, very obviously so. It didn't bother me, because I don't go to my movies to see 100% historical accuracy. That's what I want from, like, my documentaries about history. I go to my films to have an experience, to take something away from it. And I think that's what you're going to get with Gladiator 2, if you want that kind of experience. But if you're going in and saying, this has to be accurate, it's got to be better than the first film, you are setting yourself up for failure. And I'm just going to tell you that right on the outset. I really enjoy Gladiator 2, while knowing full well it is nowhere near the level of the first film. And that's okay with me. I don't need my sequels to be better or as good. I just need them to be good. And I think this is a really good movie. I really enjoyed myself. I had a fantastic time. The screening we were at, there was a mouse, and so that kind of made an interesting way in which we watched the film, because there was mice in the movie and there was mouse in the theater, and it felt real. It felt real and lived in, and I quite enjoyed that. So that's all I gotta say about the film. I really enjoyed this movie, and I would definitely recommend you check it out when it opens across from Wicked, which I have not seen yet, but I will be seeing, I think, before it's released. So I'll get back to you and tell you what I think about Glicked or Wackiator. I don't know what the term for this one's going to be, but definitely let me know your thoughts on Gladiator 2 down in the comments section below. Share your thoughts on the film when you've seen it. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about it. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe. There are 2 free things you can do that help support the channel immensely, and you never miss new episodes of the show as they drop. You can also find goatfilmreviews.com for my many written reviews. I'm definitely going to have a review of Gladiator up before the film is released. You can read more of my thoughts once I've had a chance to calm down then over there on that channel. You can also find me personally at Almighty Goatman on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. And you can find my show Kyle and Nick on Film. I co-host it with Nick Polotachuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We have new episodes of that show every single week. There's also a link in the description for this video for the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance, of which I'm a member. There's other film critics reviews, as well as more of my stuff located over there. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, leave your thoughts on the film down below. I'd love to hear what you thought about Gladiator 2. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.